The morning sun cast long shadows across my backyard in suburban Connecticut as I watched Max, my 13-year-old golden retriever, struggle to stand. His arthritis had gotten worse over the past few months, but today was different. I knew it in my gut, the way you know things that you desperately wish weren't true. "Come on, buddy," I whispered, helping him up. My hands trembled as I dialed Dr. Peterson's number. The same vet who had vaccinated Max as a puppy would now help him leave this world. Marcus Aurelius's words echoed in my mind, "Accept the things to which fate binds you." I'd been reading Stoic philosophy since my divorce 3 years ago, but today would test everything I'd learned. In the sterile examination room, I held Max's graying muzzle in my hands. His brown eyes, clouded with age but still full of love, met mine. Dr. Peterson spoke gently about quality of life and kindness, but I was lost in memories. Max racing through autumn leaves, swimming in Lake George, comforting me through sleepless nights after Sarah left. "Remember," I told myself, "the good fortune to have had him, not the misfortune of losing him." Epictetus had written about this, about focusing on what we can control and accepting what we cannot. Death wasn't under my control, but how I chose to spend these final moments was. "You've been the best friend anyone could ask for," I whispered to Max as Dr. Peterson prepared the injection. "Thank you for everything." As Max's breathing slowed, I remembered Seneca's words about grief, that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The pain was real, yes, but so was the peace of knowing I'd given him a good life and a dignified end. Walking home alone, I felt the weight of his absence in the leash I carried. But instead of running from the pain, I let it wash over me, acknowledging it as the price of 13 years of unconditional love. That evening, I sat on my back porch, where Max used to lie at my feet. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold, his color. I opened my journal and wrote, "Today I lost my dog, but today I also learned that love doesn't end with loss. It transforms into gratitude." In the days that followed, I found myself returning to the Stoic teachings that had become my anchor. They reminded me that while we can't control life's endings, we can control how we honor what we've lost. Max taught me about joy in his life, and in his death, he taught me about acceptance. Now, when I see other dogs in the park or pass the spot where Max's bed used to be, I practice what the Stoics called negative visualization, imagining life without the things we love. Not to dwell in sadness, but to appreciate what we have while we have it. Max's collar still hangs by the door, not as a monument to grief, but as a reminder of a simple truth. Everything in life is temporary, which makes it not less, but more precious. A month after Max's passing, I started volunteering at the local animal shelter. Not to replace him, the Stoics taught me that each loss should be honored on its own terms, but to channel my grief into something meaningful. That's where I met Emily, a 12-year-old girl with red-rimmed eyes, sitting cross-legged in front of a kennel. Inside was an elderly black lab named Bear, his face as white as Max's had been. "He's sick," she said without looking up. "Mom says we have to put him down." I sat beside her, maintaining what Epictetus would call a respectful distance. The concrete floor was cold and hard, much like the reality we were both facing. "Want to know something I learned recently?" I asked. She nodded, still focused on Bear. "The pain we feel when losing someone we love is actually a gift. It's proof of how much love we're capable of giving." Emily finally turned to me. "That doesn't make it hurt less." "No," I agreed, "it doesn't, but it gives the hurt meaning." We sat there, two strangers connected by parallel grief, watching Bear doze. I shared with her what I'd learned about Stoicism, translating the ancient wisdom into words a young heart could grasp. We talked about how every morning Bear had with her was a gift, how taking pictures and writing down memories could help, and how being brave doesn't mean not crying. The Stoics believed that everything in nature follows a cycle, I explained. Like seasons, spring always follows winter, but that doesn't mean we can't feel sad during winter. A week later, Emily and her mother brought Bear in for his final appointment. She asked if I would stay with them. As we sat together afterward, Emily pulled out a journal, similar to the one I'd started keeping after Max, and began writing about Bear's last day. "I'm trying to be like those philosophers you told me about," she said. "They were right. It still hurts, but I'm glad I got to love him." Looking at her, I realized that Max's legacy extended beyond our shared years. Through his loss, I'd learned lessons that now helped others navigate their own grief. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." That evening, I added a new entry to my journal. Today, I witnessed how personal suffering, when processed through wisdom, can become a light for others. Max continues to teach me, even in his absence. This, perhaps, is the most Stoic lesson of all, that no experience, not even loss, is wasted if we use it to grow and to help others grow too. The sun set once again, painting the sky in familiar golden hues. Somewhere in the shelter, another dog barked, reminding me that while life's cycles continue, our capacity to love never diminishes. It only transforms. As winter turned to spring, my involvement at the shelter deepened. One morning, while cleaning kennels, I found myself reflecting on Heracles' circles of concern, how the Stoics believed in gradually expanding our sphere of compassion. What had started as personal grief was slowly transforming into something larger than myself. The shelter director, Anne, approached me with a proposal. "We need someone to run our pet loss support group," she said. "Your perspective could help a lot of people." My initial reaction was hesitation, a familiar guard against emotional vulnerability. But then I remembered Epictetus's teaching. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. The first meeting was held in the shelter's conference room. 6 people sat in a circle, each carrying their own version of loss. There was Mike, a retired veteran whose service dog had passed; Sarah, a college student who'd lost her cat to cancer; and others, each story unique yet connected by the thread of deep love and inevitable loss. I shared Max's story, but more importantly, I shared how Stoicism had provided a framework for processing grief without diminishing its significance. We discussed practical applications, journaling as a form of reflection, meditation on impermanence, and the importance of focusing on what we can control. Grief, I explained, is like the ocean. We can't control its tides, but we can learn to swim. As weeks passed, our group grew. Emily sometimes joined us, bringing her journal filled with memories of Bear and new observations about life. She'd started helping younger kids at the shelter cope with saying goodbye to their pets. One evening, after a particularly moving session, I walked through the shelter's quiet corridors. The dogs dozed in their kennels, some elderly, some young, all temporary residents in this world. I stopped at an empty kennel. Max's teachings continued through every life touched in that support group. I took out my journal and wrote, "Today, I understand something new about loss." The Stoics spoke of amor fati, love of fate. Perhaps the greatest act of love isn't holding on to what we've lost, but allowing our loss to create spaces where others can heal. Max's death wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. Through him, I learned not just how to grieve, but how to help others navigate their own storms. In the end, isn't that what our beloved pets teach us? To love unconditionally, to live fully in the present, and to make every temporary blessing count. These are not just Stoic principles, they are the legacy of every paw print left on our hearts. As I locked up the shelter that night, a young golden retriever watched me from his kennel. His eyes, bright and hopeful, reminded me of Max's. I wasn't ready to adopt again. The Stoics taught us to be honest with ourselves about such things. But I was ready to help this dog find his own forever home, where he too would leave his unique mark on someone's heart. After all, as Marcus Aurelius reminded us, what we do now echoes in eternity. In life, we learn that the pain of loss is one of the deepest proofs of the beauty of love. Every connection, no matter how temporary, has the power to transform our lives forever. In moments of farewell, we discover the most valuable lessons: gratitude, acceptance, and the understanding that the legacy of love never really ends. It only changes form. And here we conclude another story filled with emotion and Stoic lessons. To make sure you don't miss the next videos, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, leave your like, your comment, and share it with your friends. Also, check out an excellent book recommendation in the video description and the pinned comment.